ಗೋರ್ಧನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ.
Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to our respected resource person, faculty members, students, and all the participants joining us through Zoom and YouTube Live. It's my greatest pleasure to welcome you all to the 205th Creative Weekend Talk, an initiative of Directive Goribindu. Knowledge Share is our tagline, dedicated to promote scientific temper, environmental awareness, diverse fields. Today's topic is what do you learn by studying frogs? May sound simple, opens the door to a fascinating world of science and conservation. Conservation frogs are much more than we hear during the rainy seasons. They are remarkable in environmental health, components of ecosystem, and valuable subject in biological research. Studying help us to understand biodiversity, habitat, conservation, and the delicate balance of nature. We are truly honored to have thus Dr. K.V. Gururaj, professor and researcher at Sri Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology, Bengaluru. Dr. Gururaj sir is a renowned ambient researcher whose extensive work on Indian frogs and biodiversity has significantly contributed to wildlife conservation and ecological reach. We are privileged to learn from his rich experience and scientific insights. On behalf of the entire Creactive Govinda family, I extend a heartfelt welcome to our esteemed speaker, and each one of you. I encourage everyone to actively participate, listen with curiously, and make the most of this enlightenment session. I warmly welcome you all to the 205th Creative Weekend Talk. Thank you, and let's begin the wonderful journey into fascinating world of frogs and their invaluable lessons for humanity and nature.
Thank you, Govardhan. Thanks for this invitation, and thank you all for joining on a Sunday evening and to listen to frogs. It's really heartening to see. I will I will try to compile a couple of stories that I have been there with the frogs for the last 2 to 3 decades. It is it will not be in so much of depth in science, but more to make sure that we all go together, looking at the kind of audience that we have. And then I think for last 15 to 20 minutes, I will keep it open for conversations where we can definitely discuss what is the way forward, kind of. So as you clearly see, the the opening slide shows you with a frog sitting there and stretching its hind limb. So we don't know why do they do so, right? And all of these, our understanding comes from human perspective. We still don't know what frogs are thinking, because that's the caveat. That's the fine print I want to put before I talk about my slides. So let's just jump into looking at frogs. So we have so much of frogs, so many varieties, so distinctly colored, so much of patterns, so many textures, so many habitats they are sitting and calling and croaking and doing many things that from a human perspective we try to understand what they are trying to do, right? And that's the premise in which I take today's talk. And I have, as mentioned earlier, I have two stories to tell. One is from the Malabar Tree Road perspective, and the other one is the dancing frogs perspective. So before we jump into, let's. I hope I am audible and slides are moving. Please flag me if none of these things are working. Okay. Just briefly to look at amphibians. Amphibians are animals which has two kinds of life stages, right? One has a tadpole, which is like this, right? They are not fishes. They are tadpoles, which will be inside the water, free swimming, trying to scrape on certain materials in the water or on the surface. Some of them are in the group, some of them are very isolated. And then they metamorphose to become something like this. Right. So this is a background understanding of what frogs or what amphibians are, right? And let's just move on. Yeah, this is what I mentioned. They lay eggs, they have external fertilization, then the eggs develop into small tadpoles, they live in water, they develop their hind limbs, forelimbs, and metamorphose into adults, and this cycle happens. And there are instances where the cycle can end up in just 10 months to some species where the cycle can go up to 55 years. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕೆಲವು ಕಪ್ಪೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ 10 ತಿಂಗಳಿಗೆ ಅವುಗಳ ಜೀವನ ಚಕ್ರ ಮುಗ್ದೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಕಪ್ಪೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಆಂಫಿಬಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ 55 ವರ್ಷಗಳು ತಗೊಳುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ವಿವಿಧತೆ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. So I hope it is fine if I mix my language, Kannada and English. It's not necessarily
No
that I want to
problem,
keep it in.
sis.
Yeah, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay. And if anyone has an issue, please flag me so that I will be able to look into it. Okay. Okay. Let's move forward. So, just a brief understanding. So, frogs have come on Earth something like 360 million years ago. That's what the fossil record says. Somewhere in the late Devonian period, when all the fishes have occupied all the sea, there was no space anymore. Plants have just gone onto the land, established themselves, and perhaps that's the time when frogs or the amphibians have evolved on land. So they came from the water, sea, and they came into a new landscape, which is land, right? So that is where they started evolving in certain manner, doing certain things which are not fish-like, but have all the features of a fish, right? And amphibians are the first land animals to croak or to communicate with sound. So you can keep all these numbers in your brain to understand that they are one of the oldest living creatures. Like 360 million years is 360 followed by six zeros, and human beings are two followed by five zeros old on this planet. We will move forward. Just a minute. Yeah. So, how many of them are there? This is a general question. I everywhere I get the question. So, we have over 9,000 species across the globe. So they are grouped into amphibians are grouped into three different orders. So the largest order is called Anura, or an means absence, ura means tail. These are typically like frogs and toads. You can see that there are no tail portion here. There are about 8,000 species. Coming to something which looks like a lizard, but they are not lizards. So called chordata, which has tail. And India also has two species. These are second in number with about 800 species. And the third one, which looks like an earthworm, if somebody sees this for the first time, they'll say this is earthworm, but this is not earthworm. These are also amphibians. They are called gymnophiona. That is, gymna is naked, ophio means snake. Even though they are amphibians, they're misnomered in Latin as naked snakes. They have a backbone. These are called, in common terminology, these are the Sicilians. So overall, they are about 9,000 species. So if you check where they are all distributed, so anurans are throughout the globe except Arctic and the sub-Saharan African region, whereas salamanders are majority of them are in the temperate region except for a few in the Andes in South America, because that elevation is over 5,000 meters above sea level. So you find salamanders there, whereas the Sicilians or the Gymnophiana are concentrated only in the tropical region. So you can see many of the Sicilians only in the tropical areas. You don't see in temperate regions. So coming to the unique features in them. So many of all of the amphibians are ectotherms. So what are ectotherms? They don't have their own body temperature. They wait for the sunlight to help them in metabolism. And if it is too much of sunlight, they go and take rest in shady areas. And then they are unique in terms of skin respiration. They do respire, but it's not a main respiration. It's a surface respiration kind of stuff. They exchange gases through the skin. There are small pores with which they exchange gases. And there is also another unique feature which is called the anamnion. In the sense, there is no protective layer around the embryo. Amnion is not present. That's why they are called anamnions. All these things make them very unique. So anything happens to environment, frogs are perhaps the first one to respond to for the changes that happens on the landscape. That's why they are called bioindicators kind of stuff. And even coming to the skin part, there are three layers below this dermis called epidermis. And these skin layers have color pigmented cells called chromatophores, which are of three types, which will also impart color to the frogs. So, for example, in monsoon, if you are seeing a particular frog turning into yellow, ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಕಪ್ಪೆಗಳು ನೀವು ಹಳದಿ ಬಣ್ಣಕ್ಕೆ ತಿರುಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ಕಪ್ಪೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಸ್ಕಿನ್ ಪಿಗ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಎನ್ಹಾನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಸ್ಯಾಂಥೋಫೋರ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾರೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಅದು ಹಳದಿ ಬಣ್ಣಕ್ಕೆ ತಿರುಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಕೆಲವುದು ಬ್ಲೂ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಕೆಲವುದು ಗ್ರೀನ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಈ ಟೈಪಿನ ಕಲರ್ಗಳು ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಲರ್ ಬರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾರಣ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಬಟ್ ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದೀಸ್ ಯುನಿಕ್ ಫೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ amphibians. So frogs provide medicine. So you can see there are a lot of things listed. I just want to give overview. We'll go to the stories directly. Why do we need to understand? One of the key thing is from the human perspective. What is the provision that they provide for humans is the chemical compounds. You need not have to kill the frog, but still on their skin, they have certain antimicrobial peptides that can be used to cure diseases, fight viral infections. There are so many things that one can do, right? Similarly, they have regulatory services. So frogs or toads can eat a lot of insects. So they are biopest controllers. So you need not have to spray anything. Have a lot of frogs in and around your home or your place where you are living. They generally control number of insects, right? Right. Let's move on. I will not talk about it, but I will also briefly touch on the cultural importance. Then we shift our gears, right? So if you look at cultural significance, we have some Rigvedic hymns which talk about how people, something like say 5,000 before Common Era, could able to sit and observe frogs. So these are a couple of things from them. Say they say bleat like goat or bellow like cow or the colors green and spotty kind of thing. So people used to observe and so that was a cultural significance in the sense of frog marriages, right? You don't get rain. So by performing marriage ritual, can we get rain kind of thing. So, but that's a cultural belief system. So we will not get into the belief part. We will try to appreciate what is there as a conservation value in these kind of belief systems, okay, rather than questioning the belief itself. So overarching, if you look at amphibians and amphibian world, there are so many things that is part of our life. There are so many things can contribute for the welfare of human beings. So many things, they function as ecosystem service providers kind of stuff. So in all these things, when we study, we will know more. Rather than saying that frogs are icky, slimy things, we should not have it in the home. If they pee, our eyes will burn, something happens to us. Frogs have provided a lot of stuff in understanding and perhaps betterment of human life. So we will go with that understanding to the next part. So where I will briefly talk about again, so how many species we have in India and what is happening with us. So starting from 1799, when the first amphibian, first five species were described by Schneider, to the last one in 2026, we have species from Namdafa sanctuary called Limnonectus motijil. So we have species which are just like around 500 species now, or 482 to be precise, but this number is ever increasing from last 20-25 years. So last 25 years have added more than 50% of Indian amphibians. That's what in 2000 has almost doubled. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean that frogs have evolved in the last 25 years. It does mean that our science has increased. People have started venturing into asking questions, describing species in much more advanced use of advanced technologies like DNA analysis or bioacoustics or the gerontological studies kind of. Okay. And then there is a flip side to it in the sense of what's happening to amphibians. So if you look at that part, which is really a tragedy in the making. Uh, for example, of the 8,000 species that is being surveyed and looked at the ecological perspective, almost two out of every five species are facing threat of extinction. So this is an understanding that we were able to do it in 2023. So it shows that frogs are not doing great. Frogs are there. People know they are there, but frogs are not doing well because we are changing the landscape. We are filling our water bodies. We are building our structures over there. We are cutting the roads. We are doing so many things that frogs are facing the threat. And it is not just threat. Every two out of five species are facing the threat of extinction, and it's the largest for any vertebrate group on the globe. With that, I will move to certain species just to give an idea what kind of sounds that we are able to hear, and then we will switch to the discussion for the day. So what I will do is I will play the sound. Uh, what you do is keep them in the memory, perhaps, if it is possible. The whole idea is what different sounds they make, how different they look, what kind of texture they have on the skin, kind of stuff, so that you understand that it's not one or two which we are talking about. There are so many things that we need to understand, right? So, so that was a typical toad species. Those are pretty much available across Deccan Plateau. These are called the Dathophragmus, which is genus name for toad species. And then you have another toad, very unique toad. Right, that was a toad which is capable of going onto the trees, called Malabar tree toad, which perhaps soon going to be the state amphibian of Karnataka. And then you have group of frogs which are called the cricket frogs group or Dicroglossidae family. So that's a typical sound that you will generally hear from the agriculture fields. And then you have a species which makes a sound just like kingfisher, right? And this was again described from Karnataka, which is called Karavali skittering frog. Initially, we thought it's actually a call of a bird, but then after realizing and recording, we figured out that's a new species. Similarly, you have frogs which change color, right? This is what I was telling earlier. Let us see this. That is Indian bullfrog. That video is made by C.R. Naik. It was from this year, June, near Sanikata in this place. And you can see that the frogs are actually croaking with a cobalt blue vocal sac, as well as they have yellow body. So why do they have these kind of colors? So we'll also discuss about it if we have time. And then you have frog families which are called dancing frogs. These frogs are typically in the areas where there are a lot of stream noise. Those were the dancing frogs. I didn't show the dance. We will look into it later. And then you have microhylids, which are triangular in shape, a lot of them small bodied, but look at the sound. So if you're listening for the first time, it appears there is no sound, just like an insect buzz. But if you carefully observe, there were a lot of sound that is coming out of this frog. And then there are frogs which make sound like that. This is again a microhylid, and then the congenitor of it. Right. And then you have one of India's oldest frog family called pig-nosed frog or purple frog or Nasica batrachus. And you have frogs which call like birds. And then there are frogs which are very tiny. Okay. This is where it is. Tiny ones. And then you have water droplet kind of sounds. These are golden back frogs. Will move. And then there is group of frogs which calls from rock crevices kind of stuff. But look at how they make the sound. You have to wait. It's only one sound, but worth waiting for. That's all. Right? So you heard from who makes a lot of sound to some which makes only sound like this. And there are species which are bush frogs. Right? To something which makes like this. Right. I'll just move forward so that we'll discuss further beyond looking at diversity. So the background voice of people talking is this is in Honey Valley. So even if you go there, you will find this frog late in the evening making sound. Initially, it appears like insect call that right. And then we have frogs which are on the treetop. Right. This is Rhacophorid member. Rhacophorus calcadensis. Right. So again, so if you go back to the title of the talk, what are we trying to learn by all these things? So one of the key thing is there's a huge difference from how human makes sound versus how frogs make sound. It's because humans are open sound systems where we expel air out, whereas in the frog world, the air is blocked so that they can repeat, go back and forth with their lungs being pressed. It comes out of the uh, glottis here, and the vocal cords vibrate and they go into the chamber and it deflates and the air gets back into the lung. So, like that, they can do it for long periods of time. Unlike us, we can't do more than, I don't know, 40, 50 seconds perhaps. Right? That's key thing of the functional aspect. Now, the other part is that when the frog communicates, right? So one is a signal producer, and the other one is a signal receiver. And there are a lot of stuff happens in between with the environment. The frog which croaks from the agriculture field is not same as the one which croaks from the treetop, right? Because of their unique habitats, perhaps they have figured out how to communicate better. This is one aspect I personally feel that we also need to figure it out based on how where we are placed and how we are producing our sounds. Are you from a drier belt? Are you from a coastal belt? Are you from a elevated place? Like are you from Himalayas? How is your voice production are? Is it dependent on the landscape? Definitely it has to be, because landscape plays an important role in how you communicate. But at the same time, you also need to understand many other things. So the 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 key thing in the recent years is about the climate change, right? What happens with the climate change? So sound has a relationship with the temperature. Sound has a relationship with the uh, humidity. So if you change all these things, will the sound change? Perhaps yes. So one of the study that was done way back 125 years ago, this was in Ithaca. There was a professor called Wright. He used to go on every start of the spring, because when the rain starts in America, so that is when he will go out and figure out which is the pond where the frogs are croaking, and what is the date on which they started croaking. That was his observation, and he did it for about 13 years, from 1900 to 1930, right? Each year he used to go and record April 15th, May 20th, or June 30th, whatever it is, the first day when the frogs croak in that area. So after 100 years, people went back to the same place and tried to figure out what Mr. Wright has observed. Is it the same? So among the 8 species he observed, scientists were able to track only 6 species. Among 6, only 4 species they were able to clearly see the difference, because the frog started croaking earlier than later. In the sense, they have shifted for about 15 days. So what? So then they relate this to the global climate change issues. In 100 years, there's a drastic change in the spring timing, and that is perhaps influencing the frogs to croak early. So if you relate the same thing, if you come back and observe the same thing in Indian scenario, last 4 years we have difference in our monsoonal pattern. So this year you have already seen June first week we had rain, and for 3 weeks there was no rain. So what is the implication? So we have certain sound records done in the field. We are perhaps analyzing it soon, and then we will let you know. But the change is very dramatic, because those species which have laid eggs during the first week of monsoon, now their eggs are dried, they are dead, because there is no water to hold those eggs and turn those eggs into tadpole, and tadpoles don't have place where they can freely swim and eat the food, right? So those eggs are gone. So now I don't know whether they will come back and breed again. So these are the things that will give us insights from studying frogs. This is one. So let's go to the second one, which again is one of those species which was described way back 100, years, 150 years ago, perhaps. But then what we know is only few observations for 100 years. Even for 100 years, we didn't know where it stays. But after 105 years, there were one report, two report kind of thing. And now we know this is a common tree toad across Western Ghats. But what our observations were has changed in our understanding is that the frog doesn't croak during the monsoon, but it croaks previous to monsoon in the southern part of Western Ghats, and in the northern part of Western Ghats, it croaks only after monsoon. So, by studying frogs, you also try to understand what is the monsoonal pattern in the Western Ghats. Why do these frogs croak earlier than monsoon in southern part of the Western Ghats? Why do these species croak only during the monsoon in northern parts of Western Ghats? This will be a wonderful study. One of our PhD scholars, Ms. Vaibhavi, is working on this, trying to figure it out what influences these frogs to have the pattern of calling in different part of the Western Ghats in different seasons, right? So what we did is, this is a call which I showed you earlier. So this is what Gunther described in 1876 in his paper called as Pidostypes tuberculosis, or Malabar tree toad. This was his description. We'll skip. After 105 years, It was first time reported from Mukali near Silent Valley by S.K. Bhattacharya, and then we had few observations, one in 2005 by me, and then what we also know from phylogenetics. Those who don't know about it, phylogenetics is like your family tree. So people take the tissue DNA and try to reconstruct where this particular Malabar tree toad belongs to. It is one among the most basal to the toad families in the Western Ghats, even though we have Gatophrene, but that's the other one. Whereas Pidostypes is the second oldest among the toad families in India per se. So what happened? So how did this species come to India? So all the toads, if you look at it, they have migrated from the Eurasian plate and then migrated into India and then evolved here. So this particular toad is also the one which has come from the China plate, migrated. I think it went towards the Western Ghats, and since it found its habitat, it stayed and evolved there, right? So that's one thing. Then what happens? So if the change is happening over a period of time, whether this toad is going to still remain in the Western Ghats, is it going to go extinct? As of now, nothing to worry about it. But if you start looking for the future with the climate change data kind of stuff, that I will take few slides to arrive there. We'll just show that. Sorry. Huh. So if you look at in future, what happens to the Malabar tree toad, its population going to go towards the southern part because it's the southern part of the Western Ghats which is going to receive higher rainfall compared to northern part. So any families in Goa, Maharashtra, and Karnataka border at the north may not be available in next 40 to 50 years. Though right now we are also finding them. There's plenty of populations over there. That's not an issue. But hope it may not happen going by the scientific data, this is what the future that's being predicted. I'll just show you what we did as the observation. So we did something called Mapping Malabar Tree Toad program. We started saying that, okay, let's involve people to observe this frog. And what they did was they observed it across Western Ghats, for example, from somewhere here in Agastyamalai, which is by Dr. Kalesh, and goes all the way to Koina, where Amit Syed has observed it from Koina region. So we have, I think, about 392 observations as of today, and which says that this is not under threat anymore, but it's a widespread species. It's not an endangered species. It's a good point to be happy with, but at the same time, looking at what happens to the future, because our conservation is not restricted to only protected areas, right? The species is also available outside protected areas. Then what happens to them, right? So if you look at all these issues, then the challenge is the species, even though we call it as least concern, but it may not be true because it requires habitat where it can breed. It requires streams where it can breed. It requires patches which is not disturbed, right? So again, thanks to people involved in it, is no longer endangered. It's the least concerned species. And if you look at its observation, when initially when it was thought this frog is only breeding during monsoon, what is positive about it is that people have started observing it in across the year. It is not just in the monsoon, even though the observations are pretty high during monsoon and pre-monsoon kind of thing. If you seriously look at uh, the months where the observation is made, it was made in May in the southern part of the Western Ghats. That is south of, let's say, south of Kudremukh areas and all. You start seeing observations coming as early as February, the croaking individuals. Whereas the northern part, especially after Sharavati and all, you will get those observations only post June. One thing that came clear by studying the species is that even our understanding has shifted. We were thinking that this particular toad is only a monsoon breeder. But thanks to the studies, thanks to people's observation, we now know that this frog, this toad, actually breeds much earlier than monsoon. Is it a pre-monsoon indicator? We have not arrived at it, but it could be that this is a very good indicator species, why it is widespread across Western Ghats, what is happening to it. It will be a very good question to look at it. So, and how we pushed it further, we know that on May 22nd, our then Forest Minister Ishwar Khandreji has announced that it is going to be the state amphibian. Let's hope it will happen soon. We'll move forward. So that is where one of the story, in the sense, by studying frogs, what we are trying to learn. A lot of things to learn. So one part is conservation, involvement of people, policy issues, also looking at citizen science, right? So there are so many things one can do with studying only one species for life. If you move to the next one, which is about dancing frogs, I showed you a clip where the frog was croaking, but it was not dancing. But this clip perhaps will give you an idea. And then this guy will do. Right. So let's say again, this video is taken way back in 2004. What you have just observed is a foot flagging behavior, right? Even though we misnomered it as dancing behavior, that's not a dance. But again, it's a human perception. Whatever you call with what you move with your legs, you can call it dance. So perhaps this is dancing for humans, but not for the frogs, though. The frogs are actually, in fact, doing the foot flagging behavior. What is foot flagging behavior? It is that this particular frog, if I go back and show some of it, yeah, if you look at this, the frog has stretched its leg and trying to communicate something to this frog sitting over here, right? So what it could be, that's what we did as an experiment, and that's what we learned from it. It is trying to show that this particular stone belongs to one of them, and it doesn't want the other one to come and occupy the stone. So it is almost like a territory for a frog, trying to sit on that and trying to say to the other frog that, don't come to my territory, this is mine. I want to sit here, and then communicate to perhaps female, or to show to female that I am sitting here. Nobody else should come to my place. But the other frog, when it comes there, they not only show their leg, but they will also kick each other. So if you look into the other part of this, so you might have seen that both of them kicked each other. So this guy jumped away, right? So again, this didn't happen overnight after shooting the film. It happened after many years, because we then experimented in seeing that what actually it means when they dance, right? So we did a small experiment where we kept certain platforms where we, I will also jump there to show what happens. This is where in Katlekan we did the experiment. So this is part of this is Mavingundi. If you are going from Shumoga towards Honavara, this is where my study place is, Katlekan. There is a stream over here. You can sit and see. There are a number of individuals, right? And almost like 30 individuals in this small area of 270 square meters of area. And what we did was a very simple experiment. If you see a frog sitting on this rock, we take a small speaker and a platform. We go near to that at a distance we keep about like 20 centimeter kind of thing. We start doing experiment. What experiment we do? We first put a balloon, we inflate it, we enlarge the balloon, and enlarge is not like this, but enlarge is perhaps like 2 centimeter enlargement, to show that it's only the vocal sac of a frog kind of thing. Whether for that the frog responds. And then if it is not responding, or if it is responding, we record all those things, and then we put the sound there, and then say when it inflates and the sound is there, what is the response? And then we remove this vocal sac, but only play the sound. What is the response of the frog? So like this, we keep adding the variables one after the other and try to see what is the response of the live individual kind of thing. We also do experiments with two individuals belonging to different rocks and keep it next to each other and try to figure out what are their responses, kind of. So we were able to do this experiment, and we published a small article in Current Science where we finally said that dancing behavior in this particular frog, which is called Microxylus cotigarensis, is not to have a mate choice. It is more to do male-male combating behavior or male-male agonistic behavior. So that the males are trying to figure out what is their territory. I also did a small experiment where, after seeing the male and female, I followed them and tried to figure out what exactly they do. And what they did was they laid eggs inside the stream, covered it small gravels, and trying to perhaps avoid crabs, because crabs are the main predators of frogs and toads in the streams there. So perhaps that's where they do. And again, the question comes back is why these kind of evolutions are happening, right? Why a frog is making a cavity inside a stream? Like, frogs keeping eggs in a stream, but not inside a cavity inside a stream, right? So this is a unique feature that we were able to look into, and we are trying to understand why these kind of behaviors are happening. So we published in Zootaxa. I will stop there perhaps. So this is how I think this is what we did, and we also extended further the dancing behavior, because one of my collaborator, Dr. Doris, is from University of Vienna, and she worked in the frog, which is in the Bornean landscape. So in those rainforests, there is another species called Storais parvus. She worked on that species, and what she's found was those frogs have silver white marking on their leg, whereas the Kotiara doesn't have a silver white. So what does it mean? So we did some spectral analysis of this webbing. We found that the Storais has more color patterns, whereas the Kotiara doesn't have any of those color information. And then we also try to figure out how much movement happens in the leg, in the sense whether this leg movement is only linear or it takes a larger surface. What does it mean? So we did some PCA analysis, and we through the video analysis, what we did was we put a spot on the center of the leg, and we try to map the movement of the leg. So the Kodgara dancing frog, if you look at it, its movement is very small, whereas the Storais parvus, the movement is pretty large. In a way, it is also a clear information that which has a silver white webbing in the leg wants to show off, and this behavior may not be same as the one in the Western Ghats. So the Storais one is more for a mate choice, whereas the one in the Western Ghats is for the male-male agonistic behavior. So this is the other thing that we were able to learn by analyzing the movement of the foot in the frog. We published in Ichthyology and Herpetology, and then the four new species of dancing frogs, thanks to Piju as part of the discovery. Right. I think I will stop there. This we will come back later. Right. I will talk about it later. Some of the. Oops, sorry. Right. So thanks to people in my lab, there are many people, but each one of them have contributed significantly for our understanding. Thanks to Doris and Matthew for those dancing frog experiments. Susan for the color changes in the bullfrog experiments, Mahe for supporting me, and TV Ramchandra during my postdoc period at IAC. Thank you all. If you have questions, yeah, I wanted the conversation because I felt that I'm talking from only my side. I don't have any interaction, so I'll stop here.
Oh, okay. Any questions? You can unmute yourself and you can ask the questions to sir.
You
Open
can
to
also
discussion.
key in your questions in the chat window. That will be really helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, I see my PhD scholars here. Vishwa and Vaibhavi works on Malabar tree toad. Guys, if some of the question I may not be able to answer, please help in responding to. Shashank works on Indirana, that the Iranic Salada member, which does have vocalization, but we don't know. Sona works on urban frogs and their functional aspects. Who else is there? Namrata also works on urban toads. Namrata, I'm sorry, I forgot your PhD thing. Good, good. But Namrata and Sona works with Dr. Preeti. Yeah. Could you please briefly provide information on Malabar tree toad? Please specify the special characteristics. Manjula. So, generally, toads are known to be on land, common toads. Even next to your home, there may be one or two species which appears of having uh, a skin texture which is very, what do you say, very rough, warty, and that's how the toads are. But when you look at Malabar tree toad, this has a unique feature, not just about the texture. It doesn't come to the land apart from doing during the breeding period. It stays on trees, and that too only in the Western Ghats. We have not seen anywhere else this particular species. And in the beginning of the season, they come to like they will start croaking at about 15, 16 meters above the ground, but gradually they start coming down and they come to about a meter or so. They they chorus, they croak together, they attract mate, and they breed inside streams. They leave a lot of eggs which are individual, and those eggs will again develop into tadpoles, and I don't know how many days it will take to become toads again. But then again, you don't see them after this, in the sense once the breeding is done, majority of cases it's the younger ones you will observe, but not the adults. Adults won't even croak, right? So this is what as of now we know about it. Manjula, did I answer your question? The other question is that whether how do you consider amphibian as an endangered? That's a great question. As of now, it's all based on the consultative mode. In the sense, let's say in India we are about some 30 or 40 scientists who are looking or researchers looking at amphibians. So we the IUCN norms will IUCN will conduct a survey kind of stuff. They will choose a particular species, and they will ask all the concerned researchers saying that where all you have seen, what is the number of observations you have made, have do you know how many reproductive populations are there, do you know the threats there. There are 5 criteria on which we assess. Based on that, we'll say that if the threat is continued and the population is less and the total area is less than 500 square kilometers, then it automatically gets into an endangered status, right? So this is how we analyze. Okay, there are more questions. Why is Malabar chosen to be the state amphibian? Oh, wonderful question. So what we thought initially is that we wanted to have a national frog. So this was an idea which came in the year 2020 when we were in the middle of the COVID. So at that time, again, what the idea stuck in my mind was it cannot be a unique species. For example, it cannot be Nasica batractus because North Indians or the Northeast Indians or the Deccan Plateau people may not know about it. So we need to have a species which is common across India, and we don't have any such species which is common across India. So then I also thought about can we put the bullfrog as an Indian amphibian, but there were issues with bullfrog being a predatory species in Andamans. Similarly, common toad being an alien species in Madagascar. So we removed that. And then I realized that, oh, this is not going to work. So we went for state level amphibian. So when we were working on state amphibian, again, some 4 or 5 came into my mind to propose. But what stood unique about Malabar tree toad is this is not uh, turned as a least concern species by scientists. It is done by people who are involved in it. So there were a lot of people who didn't have a scientific background, but they were just going behind and trying to figure out where this species is. So, and that is the reason why we got the assessment revised for Malabar tree toad being an endangered to least concerned by people's observation. So, this made me to think that can we have a species, though it is endemic to Western Ghats and it is available in India, though it has a name called Malabar, but you need not have to worry about Malabar because Malabar during British era, it can be any place which has hilly terrain kind of stuff. So that's where we then said it is widely distributed, not unique, but has unique features of a toad, and it has evolved, and it's only one species in the entire Pidostypes genus. So that's where we called it. Let's have this as a uh, state amphibian to recognize people's contribution. There's also a chance that there is another species called indigo bush frog, which is available in Kudremukh Peak. Can that be? So the challenge is the distribution is very limited. It is available only in that 100 to 200-meter elevation profile of the Kudremukh National Park. But if you provide that as a uh, state amphibian, you will see the immediate pressure of people going and trying to photograph and trampling the habitat. Photography, I have no problem, but if you do it ethically, but the trekking itself will pose threat to the grassland where the indigo bush frog is. So, looking at all these things, we thought not to make a particular unique, highly threatened species as endangered, not to have taglines, but to recognize something which is done by people as a state amphibian. Could El Nino event harm frogs adversely in India and the world, especially threatened species? Absolutely, yes. There's no doubt about it. That's what I was mentioning about in like when we went in this June, we were seeing in the first week the bullfrogs have congregated and even common toads have congregated and laid eggs. But after first week of June, there was no rain for 2 weeks, and those landscape completely dried. Lot of sunlight. Eggs require water to hatch and develop as tadpole. Eggs died. There was also a video by I think Kaka Bise from Amboli, who has showed that the eggs laid by Rhacophorus, that's the Malabar gliding frog, eggs are drying because of no rain. So El Nino definitely has impact, but the whole challenge is in India we are still. This is what the other part is. We are still figuring out how to estimate the population. We don't know how many individuals are there, so that we can clearly say that what has gone because of the El Nino effect. Okay, thanks for those wonderful questions. Any more? Oh, Arvind is here. Arvind has worked on the distribution modeling of Malabar tree toad.
Any more questions?
Oh, Gopal Krishna Parshram. Okay, very good. Good to see you guys. It appears like it's our own uh, internal conversation. Okay, okay. Can you explain species diversity around India and how unique it is comparison to global population? So, as I mentioned, we have about 482 species which are in India and like in the geographical space of India, kind of thing, and which have also included the endemic species in India. So we are about 5 to 6% of the global amphibian diversity. We have all the three orders. So what globe has Sicilians, salamanders, and frogs and toads. We also have Sicilian salamanders, frogs and toads. So salamanders, we have only two species, which is in the northeastern, especially Darjeeling foothills and Nepal border kind of thing. We have two species over there. Sicilians, we have an unique family of Cichlidae in the northeast India, and in the Western Ghats, northern part of Western Ghats, especially Maharashtra, uh, uh, the laterite plateau have a lot of Sicilian species, and we have about 43 of them. And then coming to the anurans, again, it's very unique. Like Pidostypes is only restricted. Similarly, dancing frogs and night frogs and the leaping frogs, all restricted only to Western Ghats. And there are species only restricted to Northeast. There are species only available in Nicobar Islands, like the uh, Rhytophrene bariate. It's a toad which lives inside the tree holes kind of stuff. So there are papers, I think regularly Zoological Survey of India, led by Dr. KP Dinesh, published the list kind of stuff. So please go through. They also take information from Dr. Frost's website, Daryl Frost's website. That's one of the leading website. So please refer to that. You have more information on the website. Manjula, so amphibians survive if there is no rain because they will just go inside the crevices or burrows, or they figure out where's the moisture. If it is too much of drought, I don't know, they might even vanish. But they try to go deeper and deeper where there is water or moisture. Okay. Anyone else who has question and want to respond to?
Any more questions? You can unmute and ask. So, I think no questions.
Yes. Thanks again, people, for coming on a Sunday
Yeah,
evening. Thank you very
thank
much.
you, Guru sir. We are very honored to have you on Creactive. Thank you one and all for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.